Hi, my friends, it's David Ault, and I want to welcome you to The Gathering. I bet if you've been following me or watching any of these, you know that these videos always center around a spiritual teaching. Together, you and I explore things around non-dualism and metaphysics and how we might be able to apply those things personally to our day-to-day lives. And yet the next five videos, which are going to correspond with the month of September in 2024. So again, depending upon when you see these, know that there's going to be five of these. They're going to be more like stories of pivotal things that have happened in this life, the life of David, that have brought me to where I am right now. Some of these stories I don't think you've ever heard before. And the theme of these stories is going to be centered around my work, which is being the founder and the executive director of Kaleidoscope Child Foundation. Again, if you know me, you know that my identity is very much wrapped around this work and has been for a long time. In fact, it's been 20 years. But for those of you who are just now finding me, Kaleidoscope Child Foundation is a very small nonprofit. We're based here in Atlanta, and we do mighty work. We provide global education and sanitation and hygiene and all the things that I've listed, fresh water, clean water access, uh, technology training, any kind of initiative that helps up-level the quality of life for children in very vulnerable territories. We're talking very poor situations, slums and villages. And that didn't just happen overnight. And the stories that you are going to hear, perhaps you haven't heard some of these, kind of shape and mold how this work has stayed alive, even amongst all kinds of challenges or situations where it felt like we weren't going to be able to continue. And that's the value of a story. And so I want to share one with you today that I hardly ever really get to tell. So 20 years ago, even prior to that, I had a longing as a young adult to be a father. I think any of us who come from violence or struggle or poverty, there is this empathic nature to want to create something better for a new generation. And that was very much a part of me. I knew that I could be a really excellent dad. And the only thing that stood in the way was um, being gay, not having the financial windfall to make something like that happen. And this was at a time when the acceptability and the visibility of that was practically nil. I just knew that that longing was there. So that's one piece of the story. And I traveled a lot. I used to speak and sing as well as do pulpit ministry in centers for spiritual living. And there was a particular trip, a particular visit to another center, actually in Las Vegas, where I was asked to speak and to sing and to do workshops. And so I lived in California and off I went to Vegas, not that far of a trip, to do this particular event on that weekend. So I'm in Las Vegas and I'm speaking, and I have books and materials, and I speak and engage with a lot of people. And a woman comes up to me after the talk, and she says, "Oh my gosh, I wish that my friend had been here." Um, in fact, I texted. I don't, maybe did she text or call? Somehow she must have called her. I don't know if there was texting and calling then, but she had communicated with her about me and what she had experienced that morning. And she was describing me. And the woman, the friend that wasn't there, said, "Oh my God, you have to invite him to," and it was to some place at one of the hotels in Las Vegas. My tendency with those types of invitations is always to politely decline. Most of the time, when I would speak or sing or perform, I would give it my all. And then there was this need inside of me to just kind of go back and recharge. So I wasn't very much a fan of continuing to engage in small talk or chit chat, or, I did my best in order to give my all. And then there was this necessary part of me that just wanted to be alone. And so I politely declined. And for whatever reason, this woman was very persistent. And she said, well, my friend who missed you today, that I told her about you, her husband and children are staying at the Bellagio because their house is being renovated. And I'm going over to see her tonight. And she really, really, really wants you to come. And I'm thinking, why would a woman who hasn't heard me or seen me be so adamant for me to come? And here's the other funny part is I too was going to stay at the Bellagio. Every once in a while, I would save my little pennies and I would do something nurturing for me. I think the Bellagio was fairly new, beautiful hotel. And so I looked at the reservation and I looked at how much one night would be. And I had saved money. And I said, I'm going to splurge after the morning's events, after the speaking and the workshop. And I'm going to go spend the afternoon and the night at the Bellagio and then drive home the next day. So that was my intent. I didn't tell her that, but she was saying, my friend is coming there. And she was so persistent that finally I did say something to her about I was considering going to the Bellagio. Um, anyway, that exchange ends. I finish my duties at that church and off I go to the Bellagio. And I would say now it's about maybe 3 in the afternoon. And I'm standing in the line, the queue, in order to go and get my reservation. And when I go up there and I give her my name, my room is paid for. My room is already paid for. And I questioned her and I, at some point when there was not an adequate, she just said it had been covered. I thought maybe somebody from the church or something had done that. Maybe I had said something to somebody. I don't know. So I end up going to my room and playing with all the buttons and the curtains open and lying in the bed and the phone rings. And it's that woman and from the church. And she asks me if I'm enjoying the room. And she invites me again to the dinner that night in the hotel. So I finally say, okay. And it turns out that in the Bellagio, under the under the ground level, there is a whole other level of, I would call them homes, almost like these big homes that open up to courtyards that you can't really see. And they are heavily guarded, and they are for people like the Shah of some country or these foreigners who perhaps are big gamblers. I don't know, but they have these reserved and they're very heavily guarded. And in order for me to go to this dinner, I had to go to a secret door. I had to give them my name. I had to be escorted by someone with um, a gun through these corridors into this home where here's this woman and her kids and the friend, the woman from the church. And she opens the door and she goes, oh my God, you're exactly how I thought, how my dream was. And that night was very bizarre. It was a lovely meal. And she's telling me that she had this dream because she's going to do this thing in Hawaii, and her intention was to have a balance of masculine and feminine energy. And even though this event was going to be centered around women, she got this download that there was supposed to be a male presence, but the male presence had to be this balance between masculine and feminine energy. And she tells me the dates, and I said, oh, that sounds really lovely, and I'm already booked, and I'm not going to be available. Well, I will just jump the storyline to when this particular trip to Hawaii was planned. And lo and behold, if I don't get the flu, and I have to cancel this other event that was in Florida, I think. And this woman calls me on the cusp of when the flu was subsiding and says, "So now are you ready to come to Hawaii?" I know, it's very bizarre. Long story short, I go to Hawaii and I go to this thing. And while I'm there, it's fine, it's pleasant. There's this beautiful ceremony that's done with one of the big kahunas of the island. I was like, wow. And it was this beautiful, beautiful place on the Garden Island, um, whose name escapes me at the moment. It starts with the L. It is very remote and it was really fantastic. But this conversation came up about the longing for children. And this woman says to me, I see you with Cambodian children. I see you with a Cambodian child, I think is the way that she said it. And I know that you're a longing to have this child. And the way that you will know that you will have this child is that you will shake hands with Angelina Jolie. So if you know anything about the actress Angelina Jolie, you know that she adopted a Cambodian baby. In fact, she was the last foreigner, the last non-Cambodian to be able to do that. They immediately cut all of that off when the situation with child sex trafficking had gotten so out of control that they just banned that altogether. And she was the very last foreigner to be able to do that. And she said, you will know that you will have a Cambodian child because you will shake Angelina Jolie's hand. Well, I knew that that was already an impossibility, so I didn't give this woman much credence and forgot about it. Thanked them all for this trip to Hawaii and these 4 or 5 days there, and came back home. And again, I live in Los Angeles. And one of the popular things at that time was the Ellen show. It was fairly new, and the buzz within the entertainment industry, oh, it's really fun, you should go. But in order to get tickets, you actually had to show up in person. And so if the taping was going to start, let's say, I think at 3 in the afternoon, then you had to be there almost as early as noon in order to stand in line because they could only allow 200 people maximum into the recording studio for the show. And so because it was so popular, people would get there very, very early and they would camp out and stay for hours until they began to let people in to the taping. So this friend of mine said, hey, do you want to go see the Ellen show? And I was like, I don't know if I want to stand in line. But then for whatever reason, I said, sure. And we just kind of made a day out of it. I think we got there at noon and there was still a very long line, a very long line. Where it's like, wow. But we hung out. We decided to do that. I think we brought like folding chairs or something. And finally, the time came when the uh, producers and the people would come in and they would start letting people in. So they start counting the number of people. And right before us was the 200 mark. And they said, sorry. And they said, you can wait if you want to go to something that was called the experience. That was like a back room that had like couches and big screens, and you weren't admitted into the studio audience, but you could hang out into the experience. And my friend did not want to do that. He was disappointed and he said, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that. And for whatever reason, I stayed. I said, I'm here. I'm just going to go and see what it's like. So I'm now in the very front of where the cutoff was, and there's still people who are going to hang out to be admitted into the experience, which I don't know, maybe another 40 people. So I wait and I wait and I wait, and they come, and somebody says there's been a cancellation. So we're going to take 5 people at the front of the line to come back in now into the studio. So I get to go in. My friend's gone. And not only do we get to come in, but we get to come up front and on the ends of where they had reserved these seats. And so now I'm sitting on the end and the show starts. And well, Guess who was one of the guests? Who was the main guest of that filming? Was Angelina Jolie. And I'm still not thinking about the woman from Hawaii now. And she was endearing, and she was talking about the adoption of her Cambodian son, and it was all quite lovely. But instead of her segment ending and then she exiting off to the side of the soundstage, Ellen said, "Why don't we go up back into towards the experience and say hello?" Well, that meant that Ellen and Angelina Jolie exited up the aisles where I'm sitting right there, and Angelina starts extending her hand, and I shake her hand. And again, I don't think it dawned on me until I got home and I just went, oh. And so when the woman said that you will have a Cambodian child, um, it isn't literally that I would have a Cambodian child, but that I have hundreds and hundreds of Cambodian children and have had many of those now since the formulation of our NGO status and the government approval, which happened right around 2010. So for 14 years, officially, I have had hundreds of Cambodian children. And I smile and I laugh. And it's a fun story. It's a great story. I can't tell you or try to apply any kind of rationale to it. And what do those stories serve? I'm not really sure, other than the fact that as we embark upon our fundraising this year, and as we look at some of the obstacles before us and how are we going to raise this money and all the upcoming events that we have in September, including a documentary that we will go with a crew in January to film, how are we going to finance all of these things? And it's the stories that remind me to just relax and that if it's meant to be, it will be. And here's the paradox. And so, in understanding that what is meant to be will be, and metaphysically understanding that, and realizing that there's no amount of efforting that can get in the way of that sort of intrinsic, meticulous unfolding. I have to remember that. And one of the things that helps me remember that are these stories. And that at times when I wasn't trying to control it, things were just unfolding. And so I bring that experience with Angelina Jolie to present day. And even though there has been quite a number of setbacks this year, I know that what is meant to be will be. And so as we move forward, my board and I and all of the people who are lovingly involved with Kaleidoscope Child Foundation and now the hundreds of people that have traveled overseas with us through all these years, I still get to practice. Isn't it funny? Still get to practice letting go. I still get to notice the fear and the efforting, and I still get to breathe, forgive myself, if you will, recognize that my humanity often gets in the way, and to trust. And in the trusting, I continue to do, but my doing now becomes more absorbed with the atmosphere of being in that trust rather than doing it all from my human fear. And that's the game. That's the paradox that all of us on a day to day basis get to practice. That fear really is about all of the what ifs, and those what ifs are often tied to some kind of thing that feels terrifying or outside of our control or a loss. And what I get to understand and remind myself over and over and over again is that there is some beautiful design, a design that would have me shake hands with Angelina Jolie that I could have never manufactured in my life, a design that has continued to bring and elevate the experience, not only with my life and these children, but it has molded me and shaped me in a way that it has brought such value and such joy and such healing to my life. to be able to do this work, that I know that what is needed will show up. So if you've watched this part one story of the 5 stories I'm going to share with you for September, you'll also notice a link that will direct you to our work at Kaleidoscope Child Foundation, and the movie, the documentary that is to be, and how we need support with that as well. And if you feel so moved and motivated and you want to contribute, then by all means, not only would I welcome that, but I would humbly bow and thank you over and over again. And for all of you who have contributed, for all of you who have traveled with me, for all of you who have prayerfully been with me on this journey all these years, thank you. It has been the joy of my life to be able to do this, and it is my hope and my anticipation to continue to do it in all the years to come. Blessings.